hats off to you guys for making it through. There's going to be, Mod 1 is one, but many, many obstacles and many, many fucking piles of shit that's going to be thrown at you over the course of your engineering career. Good choice on jobs, guys. Good choice. It'll be good. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. Okay, so first things first. Does anybody not have a laptop or a computer or something that they can install Pro Tools on? Because I need to know that. A couple of weeks, because we're starting Pro Tools on Wednesday, just so you know. No. Yeah, but do know, everybody knows that like the campus is available if you book it in advance and get, you can get time in there on the computers. It's just so much easier if you have a laptop at home, because then you can just work on it as we do it. You know what I mean? So just keep that in mind and make sure that you are familiar with how to book time in the studio. If not, you know Kathleen, right? Kathleen Guest. Make sure you email her and get like the proper procedure on how to book time, because we're going to start on Wednesday and I don't want you to be left behind. It's going to be a lot easier and a lot more fun if you can keep up. In terms of like PCs, it is a lot easier to expand because you can always replace the components. They're not as anal about having everything proprietary, and I get all that. And I do get that PCs are a lot cheaper. Me personally, just from like, how long have I been doing this? I'm 30 now, and I started when I was like 15, 16. And I started on a PC. I will say that I have had significantly less issues with MacBooks when it comes to audio applications. That's all I'll say. I mean, you guys figure out what you want to do with that information. But yeah, I've had, and I'm not just talking about me personally having less issues. Like I used to manage like a really good recording studio, like $1 million recording studio. And I've had less issues on their Macs than I have on their PCs. So it's like, based on my experience, I would just go with a Mac. But look, I mean, everybody's different. Everybody's got their own style. Maybe you could build a PC that totally blows every Mac away. So go for it. Yeah, when it comes to audio applications and the integration of the computer with the application and external devices, for whatever reason, I've had way less issues with MacBooks. I don't know why that is. I haven't done the research, but just that's my opinion if you want to hear it. I don't know if you asked for my opinion, but I just gave it to you. I'm a pretty lenient teacher, but I will say that even my grading is pretty lenient, but don't take any of that shit seriously. Whether you almost passed Mod 1 or whether you do great in Mod 2, I care way more about if you actually know your shit, and if you're put in the situation, would you be able to handle yourself? That's all I really care about. Like this is not the right thing to say-ish, but like when you get into the workforce and everything, nobody's really going to ask you like, hey, how did you do in theory class? What did you get? What's your grade? How much? Nobody's going to ask you that. But if you know your shit and you can prove yourself, that's all they want to know. So just make sure you know your shit. Don't worry. Don't stress too much about any kind of grade or anything like that. The one thing you should know, I'm very, 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 very accessible. Even though like I work during the day, please feel free to email me at any time. A lot of people just DM me most of the time if they have questions, but feel free to reach out anytime. Any questions on computers or Pro Tools or anything. I'm pretty accessible, and I want to make this as conducive to learning as possible, even though we can't even meet in person, which sucks. Yeah. No, I would like it if by tomorrow, which means if you have time today, do it. If you can buy Pro Tools, there's a 3-month subscription, and the educational price is $25. You can use that debit card that the school gave you to purchase it. So can everybody do that today and tomorrow? Yeah. Joe Rogan's cool, man. He's like one of my favorite podcasters. But like the coolest thing about audio, kind of like what Marcus was saying in terms of like, you know, helping the world and stuff, is like you can educate yourself so much just listening to like think about, like, I don't read too much. I mean, I know hold on. I know how to read, but I don't read a lot. No, you know, something funny happened. Like, I was reading the other day, and my guitarist was like, "Yo, you illiterate or something? You read so slow, bro." But like, I don't read too much because reading is like, I don't know, for some reason my attention doesn't retain as hard. It's so much easier for me to just listen to somebody explain something, and that's the power of a podcast and audiobooks. All that shit is really popular right now. And the best thing about those kinds of mediums for you guys is that it's so fucking easy to engineer and produce. You can start making money pretty fast. You know what I mean? Like the podcast job was one of my first audio engineer jobs. Basically, it's easy. Yeah, you only get paid like 12 or 15 an hour, but fuck, I would take that. You know, if you're trying to break in, and it really helps you improve your skills, editing and mixing and routing and stuff like that, just the basics. So, very cool, very cool. Who's next? You don't seem introverted. You seem pretty cool. No, but you're still in front of people. You're showing your face and you're talking. That's that's not that's not bad, bro. That's not bad at all. I used to be unbelievably introverted. I would say up to 2012, 13, I was so introverted. And then when I came to New York, I realized like, oh, this music thing isn't about my skills. You need to go out and meet people. You need to network. You need to talk to people. So trust me. Trust me when I say I know the struggle. Like, for me, going to a bar, doing like watching people do karaoke and just saying, "Oh, good job," that was a huge step for me. So I feel you. Trust me. Like, you guys see me now, it's like, "Oh, fuck yeah," but like, it was not like this for a long time. So I get it, dude. I get it. If you ever want to talk about that, let me know. Yeah. Let's do a quick review of Mod 1 first. And I'm not going to touch on everything because I know there's so much that was said in Mod 1, but let's just go over some basic stuff. So can somebody just tell me what sound is? Okay, so I would say sound is vibrations of molecules occurring in some sort of medium. And it's more likely than not an elastic medium. Do you guys know what an elastic medium is? Something that can change shape, but once the disturbance ends, it comes back to its normal state of rest. That would be so like an elastic band. When you tug on it, it comes apart, but then when you let go, it comes back to its normal state, right? So that's what an elastic medium is. So like air, water. Okay, so sound is vibrations occurring in any sort of elastic medium, right? So can somebody tell me how you would... Do you guys know what the basic mathematical function of sound is? It starts with an S. Somebody know what this is? Oh, somebody said it. Sine wave, yeah. A sine wave. A sine wave is like the most basic way of representing sound. Do you know how they get to the sine wave? Do you know the theory behind that? God damn, what'd they teach you in Mod 1? I'm fucking with you. All right, okay. So I'm talking to you guys, and as my voice comes out of my mouth, what's happening with the molecules around the air is that they're compressing and getting more close together, and then they're releasing. Compressing, releasing, compressing, releasing. And we call that compression and rarefaction. Compression is when molecules come together a lot tighter, and rarefaction is when they release, okay? So that's happening in these kind of periodic cycles. And if you think about how to represent that mathematically, I can show you like a diagram, and it's gonna make all the sense in the world once you see it. So you see how like when the molecules are super tight together, the wave goes up, and as they release, it comes down. This is how a sine wave is actually, this is how they derive an actual sine wave. Yeah, exactly. This is just across time. So if you think about the disturbance across time, you represent it this way. As the wave goes up, it means the molecules are becoming more close together, or like it's becoming denser, or the pressure is increasing. And as they release, the pressure is reducing. So it's pretty interesting, right? No, not interesting at all. Get to the beats, right? I get you. I feel you. I feel you. I got it. I get you. I get you. It's all good. Do you guys know what frequency is? Oh shit, Topless Mamadou. Got it. I feel it. Very cool, dude. Yes, number of cycles that occur per second is frequency. Do you know what characteristic of sound frequency relates to? Pitch. Anybody remember that? How frequency relates to pitch? So higher frequencies have higher pitch. Let's see, Rafi, correct me if I'm wrong, but like aren't violins and classical instruments tuned to A440? Right? So when they say A440, they're talking about the note A, which is at specifically 440 hertz. And they tune everything according to that. So if you're ever doing like an orchestral session, whether you're an engineer or a producer or a conductor, you would tell all the people in the orchestra to tune to a very specific standard. The most common standard is A440. So that means the A string or the A note on whatever string you're playing has to be exactly 440 hertz. Is anybody a guitar player? Have you guys used tuners before? Right? Marcus, you're a bassist, right? So you know what I'm talking about, right? Cool. So frequency and pitch are related to each other. Just remember that. Yes. Very good. Very good. Very good. Awesome. Yeah, there's this whole process by which when you use a balanced cable, it takes the signal and phase inverts the signal and then sends it across and then flips the phase of one of them so that the noise cancels on the other end and the original signal is retained pretty clean. It's very smart if you think about it. Cool. Have you guys done D-sub connectors and snakes? You guys have heard of all those kinds of... Do you know what a D-sub is? And all going to a single D-sub. So imagine you have a studio. So anybody who's into building their own studio, this is good information to know. If you have pieces of gear and you have like 25 different cables coming out of them, instead of having to wire 25 different cables to 25 different places, you can have all those pieces of gear go to a single D-sub and use that to connect to various other devices. Very, very efficient in terms of consolidating space and things like that. It's called a D-sub connector. What are the 3 basic types of microphones you guys went over? Yeah, the main ones that you're going to use in a studio setting are dynamic, condenser, ribbon. I mean, I've worked in a fair number of studios, and those are usually the 3 that you end up using. Do you guys know what how a dynamic microphone works? Do you guys know what every microphone needs? And I hope you guys get this one. Yeah, who said preamp? Bro, you're like one of the few people who I asked that actually get that right. Every condenser microphone needs phantom power or else it will not work. It needs that initial charge to charge the electrical plate of the capacitor so that it can then charge the other plate, and then whatever air movement happens in between the plates, that's what's actually converted to electrical energy. I just realized I told you guys that I don't know so much shit, but it sounds like I know my shit. I'm just sounding smarter than I actually am, so don't worry about it. You can get pretty far without knowing a lot of this shit. So. Huh? Resistor. A resistor. So just think about the word resistance. That means to stop something. Like a lot of these words are like, you can get it literally from the derived word. Like capacitor, you think about capacity. Like what's my capacity? Like what do I have inside of me to do? Frequency, how frequently do I go to McDonald's? Now that I'm 30, it's less, but like frequency means how often do you do something? So how many cycles per second? I go to McDonald's once a month. A sine wave at 1K repeats so many times 1,000 times in 1 second. Does that make sense? Like a lot of these words are very derivative. Correct. However, there are such types of microphones called active ribbon microphones that I believe do need phantom power. It's crazy, right? You'd think that they just call them capacitors, but they're not because they're a different technology. Um, the Rhodes, there's like a Rode microphone that's specifically an active ribbon microphone that needs phantom power to work. But as a very, very, very hard and fast rule to stay safe, never give phantom power to a ribbon microphone because the technology that ribbon microphones use is so sensitive that you could basically blow out a ribbon microphone by just clicking that phantom power. And that's 3 grand, 4 grand out the window, and you didn't even know it. So be careful. Cardioid, does anybody want to? I mean, just in case nobody knows, cardioid is basically the heart shape that. So this is a little mic. I'll take this off so you guys can actually. So this is a little stereo microphone, right? So these are two cardioid microphones. There's like a heart that happens right here and a heart that happens right here. And when you put them together, they create a left and a right signal. So you have a stereo microphone right here. It's pretty cool. Um, Bidirectional is if you just think about one microphone, there's a little heart in front, a little heart behind, and there's rejection exactly 90 degrees across, right? So where do you think you could use something like a bidirectional polar pattern? Sure, sure. Like if you're doing harmonies or something, yeah, could do that. Yep. Another cool. Say it again. Yep, woodwind is good. I was gonna say that if you had, say, so one of the instruments that's a little hard to record is like wind instruments, saxophones and things like that. A lot of people don't really get them right because they record the direct signal coming out of the saxophone, but it sounds like shit. You actually need the sound to propagate in the air for it to give it the characteristics of a saxophone. So what you could do is you could have a direct signal, but then you could also put a bidirectional microphone about 3 to 5 feet away from it. And if you have the bidirectional microphone pointing in these two directions, what it's going to do is it's going to pick up all the reverberated sound off the saxophone and reject the direct signal of the saxophone. So whenever you're thinking about microphones and polar patterns, yes, think about like the area that it picks up, but also keep in mind the areas that it rejects. There's so much use you can do with things like that. So for example, supercardioid. Anybody know what that is? I'm spitting all over my screen and shit. So close. Yes. Yes. So if you think about a supercardioid mic, it's like a cardioid, but a lot thinner. It's like a cardioid that worked out or something. So it's like a lot thinner in front, and then there's a little bit of pickup at the back, but there's also rejection at 120 degrees off axis. So all this stuff is useful information because, for example, I do a lot of rock drums. That's kind of something I'm really obsessed with. One of the biggest problems when it comes to rock drum recording is capturing a snare that doesn't have so much hi-hat in it. It's an unbelievable pain in the ass because you guys know what a drum kit looks like, right? There's a snare and then the hi-hat's like right here. So in order to capture the snare sound and get as little hi-hat as possible, one method you could do is use a supercardioid. So the supercardioid can point directly at the snare, and about 120 degrees off axis, you can use it to reject the hi-hat. So all these methods and all these formulas that you guys are learning, as crazy as it sounds, you can actually apply it in a real-world scenario. Make sense? Crazy, right? You guys haven't even thought of that. The rejection part, right? It's insane what you could do. What kind of microphones would you use for vocals in the studio? This should be pretty easy. Like dynamic condenser or ribbon, which one would you choose? Yes. Why? Just cause it looks cool for the music video? Not necessarily, but you're getting in the ballpark. And also, just a heads up, condenser microphones can have small diaphragms as well. Very good. That's the biggest reason for using a condenser microphone. Condenser microphones, because they're so much more sensitive than dynamic microphones, they're able to capture a much wider range of frequencies at a much more evened out amplitude. So if you think about, do you know what a frequency response is? Does anybody not know what it is? It's basically how a piece of gear reacts to different frequencies. Like how loud can a microphone handle low end versus high end? And if you look at the charts, a condenser microphone will usually be pretty even across the whole board. Whereas a dynamic microphone is not very good at picking up low end, like below, I want to say like 100 hertz. It starts to really wave off. And then the high end around, depending on the microphone, about 6,000 K, it starts to really wean off. So a condenser microphone is able to capture the entire range of the spectrum. What's the range of human hearing? 20 to 20K. Very good. Very good. Very good. So if you're trying to capture a vocalist, and vocals being one of the most primary instruments when it comes to song production, because vocals are so primal, and like people connect to them on such a low level, like, because by low level I mean like on such a primal level, because we're humans and we're used to hearing each other talk. So if you want to be able to capture it in a very, very pure way, you want to be able to capture that entire range, right? So that's why condenser microphones are used. Make sense? I would actually use a condenser for that. If you're going the route of like sound design or Foley, or who was into Foley? Was that Philip? That was easy to remember. Oh, and Rafi, yeah. So if you're thinking about sound design and capturing those nature sounds and sounds in the city or whatever, I would use a condenser microphone, because again, you want to be able to capture that broad range of frequencies. But think about a live performance. If you're a singer on a stage and you got the drums directly behind you, you probably don't want to use a condenser mic because those are so sensitive. Probably want to just use a dynamic microphone that needs something right in front of it to actually have sound be generated, right? Like, would you sing into a condenser microphone if you got a drummer bashing drums, right? You know what I mean? So live is a great scenario for using dynamic microphones. Another one in the studio is drums, because if you're trying to capture the sound of the toms, if you're using condenser microphones, there is a risk of capturing other things because condensers are so sensitive. So there's a benefit to sensitivity, and there's a benefit to non-sensitivity, I guess, right? Yeah, or desensitivity, right? It's all about practicality. Yeah. Signal flow, okay, that's a big one. That's one of the most important concepts you'll ever need to know. If there's anything you take away from mod 1 or even my mod, it's signal flow. Right, so signal flow is as easy as it sounds. You have signal that originates somewhere and then it goes somewhere. And in between that, it goes through various stages. It can go through wires, it can go through gear, it can go through whatever. Every step of the way is what we would call a gain stage, because there's gain either added or reduced to it. And the entire construct is what you would call signal flow. So let's break it down even further. Me talking to you, the signal flow is me opening my fucking mouth, it going through the computer and going into your headphones, and then going through your ears and into your brain. That's signal flow. That is it. There's nothing more complicated, but there's also nothing more important than signal flow. Now, why is signal flow important? Think about this. You're in a session with somebody, name their favorite artist. You don't have to be embarrassed. I mean, there's no wrong answer. Somebody shouts out Rebecca Black or something, that should be funny. No, nothing against Rebecca Black, in case there are any fans out there. What did you say? Chief Keef? Who the fuck is that? No, man. I'm out of the music game. Like I left like 2 years ago. Say it again. Big Salsa? Somebody name an artist. Like somebody, huh? The Weeknd. Okay, I know The Weeknd. I know The Weeknd. I'm kind of with it on that. Um, so imagine The Weeknd comes in. He wants to lay down some vocals for a song, right? What's the basic signal flow? You set up a microphone. It goes into what? Preamp. Okay. Now, if you're recording vocals, 100% of the time, use a compressor. So microphone to preamp to compressor to Pro Tools. That's it. That's the signal flow. Hmm. Yes. If you're using UAD software, compressors can be applied pre-DAW, but if you're using it in Pro Tools, the plugins are always post-fader, so they happen after the fact. It's always better to have it before it hits the DAW, but don't worry about compressors. I'll get into that later. So, microphone to preamp to compressor to DAW, right? Now, let me ask you something. You set everything up, the Weeknd walks in, and you're about to lay down a track, you hit the record enable button, there's no signal coming through. What the fuck happened, right? So what do? What's the first thing you would do? Yes. Okay, but like specifically what? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't care about the terms, but yeah, keep going. That's good. That's good. 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 Well, compressor, you got to check the exact same thing with the compressor, and the exact same thing with the DAW. No, microphone always goes to a preamp. Always goes to preamp first, then goes to a compressor. So what? Yes, after the preamp. Yes. Yes, you're right. So what Mamadou just did there is what we call troubleshooting, which is also what Eric pointed out. Troubleshooting is one of the most common things you'll be doing as an engineer. It is so easy for somebody to sit down and hit the record button. There is no skill required, and that does not make you an engineer. Trust me. What you're going to encounter is these little issues along the way that if you just think about it for a second, you'll get it. So troubleshooting. What troubleshooting is just real time problem solving. That's basically what it is. So if you have a microphone connected to a compressor, connected to a preamp, connected to a compressor, going to a DAW, your first thought, if that's not working, well, the first thought should be remain calm. It's going to be okay. Follow the signal chain, which is what Mamadou just did. He checks the cable that the microphone is plugged into. Is it a good cable? Is it a bad cable? I don't know. Let's switch it out. See if that works. Go to the preamp. Is the phantom power on? Yes? No? Is the gain turned up? Is the signal coming into the preamp? Okay, it seems to be coming into the preamp. Let's move on to the compressor. Is the signal coming into the compressor? No. Okay, wait, something's going on. Maybe I got to check the connection on the patch bay for that. So you're basically following the signal every step of the way in order to troubleshoot it to get the signal to where you want it to go. Does that make sense? This is what signal flow is about. Does that make sense now, what signal flow is and why it's so important? Right, because in your home set, like a lot of you may have home setups, you might have homies that have home setups and everything, but like In those setups, it's pretty basic. Microphone goes straight to the interface, you're done. When you get to those pro level studios, there's gonna be different gear that comes in between the microphone and the DAW, and your job as an engineer is to make sure that every step of the way the signal is clean and the signal is getting through from the microphone to Pro Tools. Make sense? And stay calm. Always stay calm. Do not show on your face that you don't know what the fuck just happened. If The Weeknd is behind the microphone and you give a look like what the fuck is going on, he's probably gonna leave. He can book any studio in the world. He doesn't want to work with you. Does that make sense? Stay calm. And another thing I'll say about signal flow, just to kind of bring it back around, we just talked about the example of one microphone and a vocalist. Like, think about a full band. Think about like drums, bass, guitar, vocals, piano, Rhodes. Everything has microphones on it, and one microphone isn't working. Do you know what I mean? This is the importance of signal flow. If you understand signal flow and know that everything is just a chain of command from one place to another, there's nothing to panic about. You just follow the signal chain. Which microphone is out? Oh, it's the one on the guitar? Okay, let me check it. Let's see if the cable's good. Yeah, cable seems okay. Maybe the microphone's fucked. Swap out the microphone. Oh, it works. Done. Do you know what I mean? So primarily, so I mainly do a lot of more on the rock stuff. When I was at Engine Room, I did a lot of hip hop, and the most common signal chain was what's it called? The X73 Vintech X73 preamp, which is modeled after the Neve console 1073. That going into a TubeTech CL1B. That's like the most popular hip hop chain. I know a lot of people love the Avalon. I was never a fan of it, but a lot of hip hop people love the sound of the Avalon preamp. And it's a preamp and a compressor, so it has both in it. Yes. So the Avalon is an example of that. I think it's the Avalon 737, if I'm not mistaken, or 747. I think it's no, it's called the Avalon 737, I want to say. Yeah, the 737. The VT 737 SP. So that's a preamp and an EQ and a compressor. A lot of hip hop people, for whatever reason, at least when I was working there, they loved that sound. I don't know what they liked about it. No, they specifically liked the sound because like they didn't have to worry about the workflow. Like I was the engineer, so they didn't have to worry about the cables and all that shit. They just liked the sound. Can't explain it, but you do what they want because it's their art and you're here to serve them, right? That sounded so like you're here to serve the overall masters of the world. Yeah, that's my go-to for vocals. Oh, good. Does this all make sense? Is anybody like lost and confused? That's the one thing. You shouldn't be like, don't feel shy to speak up. I know Ken's class might have been like a military situation, but like, I need you guys to speak up and let me know because I'm happy to clear any questions and explain it in 5 different ways if I have to, because it's more important to me that you understand these things than it is for me to give you a grade or a test. No, they're like $200 maybe tops. So the UAD is like $1,000, right? So that's like a high-end interface. High-end interface, $1,000. The UAD has preamps built in it, has A to D converters, D to A converters, has headphone amps, has TRS inputs, TS inputs. Now think about all those components. Why am I doing this? Right? Think about all those components in a piece of gear that's $1,000, maybe $1,200 at most. When you go to like a pro studio, each one of these components is its own individual piece of gear, and they're probably $3,000 each. So we're talking already 15 grand, 20 grand in a pro studio. Now, whether it's better or worse in terms of sonics is totally debatable, That's a conversation that's been going on for a long time right now. You guys have probably heard this, right? The analog versus digital thing, like, oh, we should be all analog, or oh, we should be all digital. I think everybody's going hybrid, and I don't think there's any better way to do it. Hybrid is probably one of the best ways I can think of. But it's up to you. A lot of you guys wanted to get into the role of an engineer, or at least understand what an engineer does to a certain degree. Now, the obvious thing that an engineer does is what you already know in your head, which is he records people, musicians, sound, for Foley or whatever, and he mixes them. Does anybody know what mixing is? It's basically the balancing out of various instruments and sounds in order to create a coherent piece of art, if you want to call it that. And then mastering is a whole other thing, which I can get into later, right? So an engineer is basically responsible for capturing clean audio, ensuring that the audio is edited down, cleaned up, and it sounds good whenever it's delivered to the consumer being the audience, right? That's a basic role of an engineer. Now, here's the thing. If you guys get into the actual industry of being a sound engineer by profession, that constitutes like maybe 30% of the game. Maybe 30%. I know that sounds like ridiculous, but I'm telling you the honest truth from experience, that most of the game is your personality, how you keep the vibe going in a room, and your professionalism, troubleshooting, and customer service. I'm telling you, so, like, people don't believe me when I say this, but like that is literally 80% or 70% of your job as an engineer if you work at a pro studio or if you work in a professional field as a sound engineer. So I know that's, I don't know if that's a surprise or if that's something that Ken already iterated to you, rather. But that's a big deal. In order to become a sound engineer, it takes way more than just your skills. Like I said, anybody can hit 3 or command space or whatever and record people. It takes a lot of work to make an artist feel comfortable, to give him the space and allow him the flexibility to perform the way he needs to perform. He needs to feel comfortable enough to actually give you good takes. If you're like not professional and you don't create a safe environment, he's not going to give you good takes. He's not going to think that, oh, I suck as an artist. He's going to be like, man, this engineer fucking sucks. I'm not coming back to him. Like, listen to these takes that I got. They all suck. So you got to really keep that in mind. So little things like making sure their water's available, greeting them. Hey, how's it going, man? How you feeling? You want to chill out? You want to smoke here? How do you feel right now? Making them feel comfortable and the vibe. I can't stress this enough, but keeping a vibe going in a room is one of the most important things ever. So please, please, please keep that in mind. Things like, it's funny, right? Like a lot of artists will come with their team of people, and like if somebody just randomly says like, "Oh man, getting a little thirsty here," like you should automatically register that as a call down to the front and be like, "Hey, can we get some more waters up here?" Like don't wait for people to ask you to do shit. Like be proactive and be on top of those things. Keep your ears and eyes open in terms of what does the artist need, what does the people around him need. I know this is all very like very feel-goody bullshit, but I promise you that this is like the core of what engineers do. Believe me or not. Customer service, that's a very, very big thing. So like if the artist wants something, more likely than not, there shouldn't be a reason why you can't give it to him. Like if he wants like a couple of drinks, you ask the intern to make a run to go get a drink, right? If he needs papers at 12 o'clock at midnight, hey man, you got to find out how to get some papers at 12 o'clock at midnight. It is what it is, right? It's all making sense, right? These are mainly for like engineers who work at pro studios and work with artists. Troubleshooting, I already mentioned that. Troubleshooting being one of the most important things you'll have to figure out because it's connected to signal flow. Signal flow is basically the chain through which a signal flows from origin to destination. If you don't know the signal flow properly, you can't troubleshoot properly. And believe me when I say that there will always be the possibility of something going horribly wrong in a session. So, for example, we just talked about the weekend session where like the microphone isn't working. Well, let's think about another scenario. What if the computer runs out of storage space? Right? What do you do in those situations? Things like that. You need to be able to address all these different issues. In different studios, they'll have different protocols for doing it. So for example, in a bigger studio, they'll have like a master backup that's offline, and you'll be able to dump some stuff onto there and clear up space on the hard drive. But you need to be prepared for every scenario. And I will say, when it comes to proactivity, if you can set up a session on the computer, check that there's enough disk space, make sure the microphone's working, like actually have an intern in front of the microphone talk and snap and make sure you're getting signal from one to the other. If you have water set up, if you have the temperature at a good 72, 74 degrees, if you have everything ready to go so that when the artist comes in, he's like, oh shit, this is already another level. You know what I mean? Like first impressions go a long, long way. The artist comes in and you're fucking around with a cable and dropping water bottles and trying to delete stuff, it's not a good look. Does this make sense? This all makes sense, right? I know these sound like very commonsensical things, but for some reason, people get it in their head that like this is not a part of the job. Now, somebody mentioned working in catering and stuff that's not... Oh, is that you? Yeah, dude. I know that sounds like a kind of like, oh, I need to do what I have to do to get ahead, but you're already in a good space because you have to deal with people. Dude. Anticipating what people need. Right? Yeah. Dude, totally. And like catering is a good way to actually get your people skills up. So like Tim, you said you're pretty introverted, right? And I've been there too. And when I realized like this game was way more a people game than it was a skill audio game, I kind of proactively went out and tried to just say hi to one new person every time I went out. That was like, dude, when I tell you how scared I was like, man, what the fuck am I doing in a bar at 11 p.m. at night trying to say hi to one performer? But you get your people skills up because it's very, very important in this industry. Anticipating, say it again? Yeah, no, it sounds like you already, like when you said you're introvert, I'm like, get the fuck out, what are you talking about? That's not introverted behavior, man. You're good, you're good. A simple example of anticipation. So I gave you the example of the waters, right? So if you're dealing with, oh, and this is also a good example of where music theory-ish can come into play. So if you're dealing with a basic pop song, which is going to be like when you're starting out, 80 to 90% of your sessions are going to be basic pop songs. If you know how a song is structured very basically, and if the artist has already sang the hook and he's on verse 2, bro, just fly the hook over to chorus 2. And then when the artist comes out and is like, hey, okay, can we just fly over the chorus? You're like, bro, it's already done. We're good. Like, that is such a good look on your part as an engineer. Because you already know what needs to be done. You know the chorus needs to go there. So why do you need to have somebody tell you that shit? If you're just sitting around and waiting for somebody to like, hey, can you fly this hook over? Hey, can you do this? It's like, it just seems like you're not into it. Like, why are you even here? You're just here to hit 3 and press record, and nobody wants to work with that shit. You know what I mean? Is this all making sense? Like, right? Yeah. Yes. Yep. Comping, I think, is day. I want to get it right, but boom, 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 boom. Where is it? Editing. It's one of these days. Oh, it's Monday. It's next Monday. There you go. It's next Monday. Automation is a little more advanced, and that's like I think 2 weeks away. Like not next Monday, but yeah, we can talk about automation. And just so you guys know, like I've basically put up most of my lessons from what I did in Mod 2. They're up on YouTube for free. So and I talk about automation and vocal production and all that stuff there. So feel free to look at those, and like if you have questions, hit me back. And if we have any extra time in this mod, I'm glad to go above and beyond the module. I'm totally down for that shit. It's just my name, Jeet Suresh Paul. Maybe I'll just type it. I'll just put it in the chat. Yes. Actually, they're primarily Pro Tools because I'm primarily a Pro Tools guy. Like Ableton is something that I know loosely, but Pro Tools is my primary DAW. And just so you guys know, the reason why a lot of institutions insist that you work in Pro Tools is because it's still, in some ways, the industry standard. Like most pro studios, most places that do film, especially if you're into film scoring and Foley stuff, they're primarily working in Pro Tools. Audiobooks, a lot of them work in Pro Tools. So if you have Pro Tools as a skill set, you're already creating opportunities for you to get paid. So that's why people want to teach you Pro Tools. It's still the industry standard in a lot of ways. I don't know a lot of people doing film scores in Logic and Ableton. I think film scores are primarily done, especially if you're doing film scores like film scores are usually done to picture. The time coding aspect of Pro Tools is really, really, really good. So if anybody's into film scoring, Pro Tools is a great way to get into that. Let's see, what else about engineers do we want to talk about? Now, I do want to say, like, even though I've mentioned a lot of this stuff about keeping the vibe going and all this kind of like, I don't even know what the term is, but aesthetic stuff, at the core of everything, you still need to know your audio stuff, and you need to get like clean sounds, and you need to know how different gears work. I'm just saying that is the baseline for all engineers. Everybody who is an engineer needs to know the basic tools and how to get clean sound and all that stuff. It's everything on top of that that's going to determine how far you progress in the field. Like I really had a hard time realizing that this is not a skill game. It really isn't. It's a people game. And you have to get good at that one way or the other. Do you know what I mean? Is this all making sense? And if you guys are taking, I mean, I'm happy to like put these lessons up online too if you want to, if it's easier. Would it help you guys to refer back to all these lessons? I can put them up. I mean, not you guys. You don't like, we don't want to see you guys if you don't want, but like, if you just want me explaining stuff, I can put them up. It's not that hard to do. Cause I know some of you guys like to take notes and shit, but if it's taken away from your actual retention of knowledge, don't bother. Like I'll just put it up. I'll put on YouTube. Yeah, I mainly work on YouTube. Yeah, and plus when we get into Pro Tools, it'll be a lot easier to follow along. Cool. Yeah, I think that's basically all the roles that an engineer does. Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have a big realization or anything they want to share, or anything that they found profound, or anything that they're not sure about? Like, wait, what? We have to keep a vibe going? Like, what does that got to do with sound? It's got everything to do with sound. So it can mean a lot of things. Like I know that's a little vague, but like think about it in terms of your job as an engineer will require working with many, many, many different types of people, kind of like Rafi and his catering. You have to be able to adapt to everybody's personality and figure out what works for them in order to get the best take and performance and get their art the best representation. Does that make sense? So, for example, if it's a hip hop guy, maybe there's a certain atmosphere you want to create. If it's a classical person, there's a different atmosphere you have to create. You know what I mean? You know? Yeah. If it's a corporate person versus like a street person, like there's two, like I always consider like there's like corporate level engineering and then there's like just casual street level engineering. And there's two totally different ways that you have to approach those sessions. I mean, you know, in the studio, we used to call them like corporate mixes and ghetto mixes. It's totally different approaches. And they're both very valid. There's nothing wrong with either of them. They just need totally different approaches towards them. And as an engineer, you need to be adaptive to that. Making sense? So, for example, one of the other jobs that I do is work at a company called the Criterion Collection, which is a film restoration company. So I would consider that like corporate engineering, where they don't like, I literally work internally with an office and a team of people. So it's got nothing to do, I have no interaction with the client, like the director, filmmaker, I have no interaction. My job is just to get the absolute cleanest sound possible by any means necessary. That's what I would consider a corporate session or corporate work, right? Flip it over when I was working at the studio. So for example, like the time I did a session with, you guys know Don Q, right? So a session with him is not corporate, just so you know. So it was me sitting here in front of the console. He's sitting right next to me with a microphone in front of him. 10 of his homeboys behind us, smoking up, playing with money, whatever, right? And I have to capture his vocals in the best way I can, keep the vibe going back there, make sure the mix sounds okay, and, you know, all kinds of, yeah, it was definitely, like literally lit, if you know what I mean. I like both of them a lot, and I'll tell you why. For multiple reasons. The corporate stuff I love because I don't have to deal with fucking people. I can just get in my zone and get the best audio product possible. And that's a personal challenge for me that I really love to do. Another reason why I like it is that corporate pays. I like money, right? Now, the ghetto side, man, there is just so much fun to be had, and there's just like an energy to the artists that come in, and there's just something that you can really play off of that you just don't get in corporate world. So there's something that I love from both sides, which is why I do both. So I can't pick one or the other. If I had to choose one, I couldn't. I would be miserable if I just did one of them, because ghetto is super fun, but not a lot of money. Corporate is money, and I can focus on my skills, but I don't have to be a people person there. I can just be the fucking annoying audio guy that I want to be. So I would say both. Lucrative, so it's kind of like with everything else where it's highly competitive. And if you get that client who loves you, yes, it can be lucrative, yes. And if you work your way up that ladder, yes, it can be lucrative, but that's kind of like audio engineering as well. It's like it's very, very competitive, and not a lot of people make it all the way up that ladder. Sometimes you don't even have to make it up the ladder. You just need to find somebody with a lot of money who just wants to pay you to write lines. So, is this like kind of giving you guys an image of what studio life is and what the industry is like, kind of? Yeah, so this is partially, and I'm very glad that you're ready to take on some of the responsibility too. That means you're mature as an artist. I think there are two factors. That one, this is the journey of an artist. They go through life trying to find out the best ways to express themselves and represent themselves. This is a never-ending journey. It's never going to end. You yourself as an artist need to get more familiar with the recording process. You need to be recording yourself constantly. You need to know how to, when you punch in, you need to be able to match exactly what you just said, you need to match it into. So one thing you can do is do one of those lead ups. So you sing or you rap leading into the punch in, right? You don't just jump in. You rap a little before and a little after, and he just punches it in. So that's one method of doing it. The other thing is, yeah, as an artist, you really need to figure out when people say high energy, what does that mean? Does that mean like pitch up here? Does it mean and like does it mean louder? Does it mean like you really need to analyze and dissect your sound? Because half this is totally on the artist side. You need to understand your sound a lot more. As far as the technical side, in terms of like which microphone and stuff, that there's the only way I know how artists have done it is that they experiment, experiment, experiment constantly. If you can, what I would do, and the thing is, well, there's actually a smart way to do it. You should go to various studios because different studios have different gear. Try different types of microphones and just like literally you could even just say like, hey, can I I'm just here to record my voice on four different microphones. Book like 2 hours to do that through different preamps. Take it home, see how it works in the context of a song. Actually, yeah, that's the way you should do it. Pick one song, all right, and you got to be prepared and disciplined to do this. Pick one song that you like, and go to four different studios with four different setups. Try it, and then you got to sit down with yourself on these four different recordings and be like, man, which one do I like? Which is closer to which, you know? That's one way of doing it. And another way, obviously, is to find an engineer who is more experienced and can guide you in that regard. But it sounds like you want to be more self-reliant. So if that's the case, I would do the first way and experiment with different microphones and stuff. The way I do it, and you could do it this way if you want, because like I'm also a singer to a degree as well. Every song, at least when I was like starting out, I would try different setups with every song. And sometimes the song would just not come out the best way I want it because it wasn't the right microphone or whatever. But that's a hit I'm willing to take if it means I'm taking a step towards where I want to be eventually. And now I know exactly what I would want to do, right? So it's experimentation. It's all experimentation. Yeah. 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 No, there was different energies to it. Yeah. Well, yes. 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 Yeah. That's good. That's a really good attitude to have, dude, because like at the end of the day, unless you have your engineer who knows you and your sound and can get it for you every time, until you get to that level, it's all on you. Because even if you said that if you go to a high end studio, bro, I'm telling you because I've worked at a high end studio, like sometimes you'll luck out and you'll get an engineer who's like knows exactly what he's doing. Sometimes it might be the guy's first time. He just got promoted and he's like, oh shit, I got my first session. It is what it is. Like you're paying for the gear and stuff. And hey, that guy might knock it out of the park. Like he might be so ready and so prepared that he knocks it out of the park. But if you as an artist don't know what you're looking for, he can't really help you in that regard, you know? Sure. Get your sound. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Little tips. Yeah. Bro, a lot of people think there's like a perception because it's literally you set up one microphone, but there's a perception that vocals are easy. They're not easy, man. The amount of work that goes into capturing a good vocal performance is insane. If you think about the artist has to be in the right headspace. They have to make sure they haven't eaten anything funny so that their voice is cracked up or whatever, right? They got to think about, if they're lactose intolerant, their stomach is all, oh man, why'd I eat that shit today? Like, they got to think about all that. Then they have to think about the emotion, the intent behind the song, and connecting with it on some external level, like really, really high level. And they have to be on pitch, and they have to be on time, and they have to deliver, and they have to enunciate. Like, dude, so many fucking things go into a vocal performance. It is not easy, man. So it takes a lot of time, a lot of experimenting, working with different engineers, finding my personal favorite is finding the engineer who kind of just gets you, who knows how to get you in that space, and then just sticking with him. And he might not get your sound every time in the beginning, but as you start to feed off of each other, he'll start to get, okay, I know what my boy wants. You worry about giving me the best performance, I'll get your sound. Yeah. Hmm. Sure. Sure. Did you feel like he was putting it on because he thought you needed it? That's what you felt? Well, okay. So this is where the people skills come in. And again, I've seen a lot of relationships go to shit simply because they didn't communicate with each other. Basically, if like it's as simple as like, hey man, I don't need it for this song. That's it. Just say it. Done. He probably just assumed because he's used to putting autotune on a lot of vocals. He's like, oh well, here we go. Another day at the office. Autotune. Here we go. He's probably not thinking again. If he's not your dedicated engineer, he's not going to ask you all these things, and he's not going to care. He's like, it's another day at the office. I'm trying to help this artist, trying to get him the best he can. He probably wants autotune. Bro, it might be wrong. You just say like, hey man, don't need autotune on this. Appreciate you, but don't take it as an insult. It's like he's probably just doing his thing. Probably what he knows. Yeah, that miscommunication thing can fuck up so much, man. People skills. I can't stress it enough. People skills. Get your people skills up. Got to. I mean, there's a little bit of luck involved as well. I got a little lucky. I will say that. Like, I I I I interned at a studio that was a pretty well established studio where a lot of hip hop people came. I interned and moved up the ladder pretty fast, and that was definitely like obviously I worked hard, but like I don't know, man. Like everybody works hard, right? So there was a little bit of luck involved as well. like like I was an intern for a couple of months, and one of my shifts was on a Saturday, and on Saturday the managers don't come in. Literally, the interns have to take care of the place. This is like a multi-million-dollar studio, right? So my partner, my intern partner would always come in like 2 hours late. So I would end up having to clean the whole place. I'm talking like thousands of square feet by myself in the morning, and he'd show up after like, hey, what's up? You do the cleaning? I'm like, I did the cleaning. Fuck you. But one day, the manager on a Monday morning, he was reviewing the footage of the cameras, and he's like, oh shit, you clean this whole place by yourself? I'm like, yeah, just do it. And it's like, oh, okay, good to know. And like that, he kept that in mind, told the owner, and like about a month later, I was like assistant mastering engineer working on Trey Songz. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's like there's hard work, but there's luck. You know what I mean? There's like, it's a weird balance. Yes, in fact. In fact, the way Trey Songz got his engineer, Ant, Anthony Daniels, is because the engineer that was supposed to show up for that one session didn't show up. Anthony was the assistant. He hopped on Trey's session. Trey fell in love with him, and ever since then, Anthony's been busy as hell. He's like the one of the most low key, amazing engineers I ever got to meet. Man, he's just unbelievable.